Okay, YouTubers, this is Joe from ArtAlienTV. Another quick game of interplanetary I Spy going on here, back to Mars, back to Gale crater, and we are looking at some images today from lots of different sols, but mainly this one. This is a new find, which I found this morning, early this morning, about 3 o'clock this morning. I often work very late into the night, and I find I can concentrate better when there's less distractions around. And we have this image. Now, the thing to look at is this thing here. And I've also got a playlist that I put together called Mars Cyborgs Breathing Gear. Now, it's come to my attention over the years that some of these remains on the surface seem to be wearing or seem to have some kind of breathing apparatus attached to their faces, either their nose or their mouth or whatever, or seem to be wearing kind of helmets and similar things. So I'm going to show you some of those today and see if we can work out what's going on here. First of all, let me show you what the new find. Now, this is from Sol 474, and links will be below for all these images if you want to download them. And if you want to download the images from the playlist, which will have lots of different things to look at, then you need to go to each individual video in the playlist, and there will be links below them, okay? So these can all be downloaded and cross-referenced if necessary. Now, this is pretty hard to spot when you look at it. It looks like it's been obfuscated or at least been blurred out slightly, but this may just be a case of where sort of Mars dust has landed on it and kind of makes it blend in with the background here. But we've got a head, and what's unusual about this head is it has what seems to be, let's go in a bit closer, a jaw here with external parts. Now, why would a jaw have external parts like this? We've got a row of teeth here. We've got a nose here. We have an eye here and another eye here. And the head comes up. Now, what I've done here, I've actually selected round this object, or head, whatever you want to call it, and I've brightened it right up so that it stands out against the background, because if you look at the raw image here, you can only barely make out the edge of this thing up here. It's kind of blended in with the background. Now, this is what happens with an orange filter that they use on these images. You can barely make out the top of this thing because basically it's probably got dust on it and it's kind of camouflaged it against the background. Now, this is also an attribute of a low-res camera, which is slightly out of focus on these things. It's not properly focused on the object, which means that the edges are blurred. And this is why things look fuzzy and undefined. And if it wasn't for these shadows around the edge, we wouldn't actually be able to notice what this was at all. But luckily, there's a good shadow here, giving it form and shape so we can work out what we're looking at. So basically, this is it. We've got a strange head with quasi-humanoid features. The top of the head has been sheared off here. This whole part of the head looks like it's been smashed, as if the person had been sculpted, or perhaps this is a representation of a person, i.e. a statue, and it's just split and been damaged in the cataclysm. Who knows? But there's some technical details in here which make me believe that this may not just be a statue. This may actually be what you might call a cyborg. Now, what is a cyborg? Now, this is something I pulled up on Google Images last night. And we have an illustration of somebody wearing a helmet with breathing gear, okay? I thought this was pretty cool. You've got tubes coming out of this part here, like a breathing gear going over the mouth and nose, and we have a helmet. Now, why would you need breathing gear on Mars if you were an indigenous person? What would be the purpose of it? Now, this got me thinking. Now, before I go into that, let me show you some other examples of similar things. We have the Trooper, which is something I published very recently, which seems to have some kind of breathing apparatus over the nose. You can see 2 nostrils here. Now that's probably from the actual nose of the person here. But we have this triangular structure going over the nose and what seem to be parts coming out of it, which looks, for all intents and purposes, like some kind of breathing apparatus inside this helmet, okay? Now, there are other examples of this, and this was a good one as well, which I published recently. And this looks like some kind of humanoid with a helmet. The helmet comes back like this, and we've got a nose here with a pipe coming out of it, with these parts like some kind of breathing pipe. There's also an ear kind of structure here, which it seems to be joined to. So here's the new find, with what looks like an exterior jewel part here. We've got, let me go in close. This got me thinking, what are we looking at? Does this mean that some of the Martians had an exoskeleton? In other words, having bony parts on the outside of their body rather than on the inside. This is possible, but if you look at the details in here, and you can see these in the raw image here, you've got a square eye. Now, why would you have a square eye instead of a rounded one like this? What's going on here? This to me looks like some kind of very ancient, weathered and damaged cyborg, or some kind of biomechanical technology going on here, because we've got an outer jewel here. We've got this bit coming around here. And in fact, if you look at really closely, you can actually see that this part comes down like that. It's a mechanical part like that. And this part here is very similar and comes around like this. Now, are these teeth? Are they some kind of weird sort of mutation? I don't think they are. I think this is some kind of technology we're looking at here. And we've got teeth here, like this. We've got rather a puggish nose, like many of them have, with up-facing nostrils, kind of ape-like. We have an eye here that looks square, and it has square parts to it like this. Okay? This isn't a rounded eye. This looks mechanical. Now, could it be that some Martians had disabilities and they had sort of prosthetics, like prosthetic eyes or prosthetic parts to them? Is that possible? I think it could be. But what it also says to me, when you look at it, when you look at some of the other ones that I've got here, like this one, let's go in a bit closer to this one because it's not that clear. We've got a nose here, we've got a mouth here with teeth, there's some teeth here. The nose comes round like that, and we've got this pipe coming out, which comes up here, and then it joins onto this bit here. Right? Which then joins onto this, which is then joined onto what seems to be a very damaged sort of helmet. And we have an eye here, and sort of brow ridges here. So it's like a helmet coming round, like this. Now it looks like to be some detail or damage to it up here. And there's some interesting parts of here. There's a circular part here. But if you look at this pipe thing, we've got sections to this pipe coming around like this. So this looks like breathing apparatus. Now, why would you need the mouth part there? This looks mechanical. This doesn't look like a normal skull. And there's also something joined to it here. This looks very mechanical. As if this was worn by a pilot or a soldier or something similar, or somebody similar, right? Mechanical parts. Now, why would you need to be wearing breathing gear on Mars? Now, of course, if we went to Mars, we would need breathing gear because we're told that there's very little oxygen there, less than 1% or less than 2% oxygen, possibly even less than that. Now, low down in Gale crater, that may be slightly higher because it's miles, it's about 3 miles below the surface. but it would still be very low. And the air pressure is also very, very low indeed. So if you were not wearing some kind of headgear, your eyeballs would pop out and your face, the liquid in your head would probably boil, and your skin would crack and erupt due to the low air pressure, like almost as if you were in space or on the moon or something. Not quite as bad as that, but quite severe. Now we also have another one here. This is one that I think was found by Monty Williams many years ago. This particular thing was spotted by Monty Williams, but this particular image of this thing was spotted by me actually a couple of years ago. And this one also seems to have, it's not very clear this, something, we got an eye here, we got an eye here, we got a nose here, we got a mouth here, we got a head coming round, we got an ear. It's not very clear. You've got to sit back a bit from this one. It's out of focus and a long way off. But we have a mouth coming round with something in the mouth here. You can see an object sticking into the mouth. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean it's breathing gear? Possibly. Not very clear, that one. Let's move on to the next one. Now, this is another one that people slated when I published it a while ago. I published this about a year ago or so, a couple of years ago. And this looks very much like either a diver or a spaceman, or a pilot, or something along those lines. Now we have an incredibly pitted helmet that comes right round, like this. This is the inner part with the person inside. You've got an eye here, an eye here. We have nostrils, one there and one there, with a nose, but with some kind of apparatus attached to it here. Technical apparatus, breathing apparatus. You've got a lip down there. So if I get rid of that, you can actually see what I'm saying there. Let's go in a bit closer. This one's a bit more detailed. This is fairly close to the actual rover, this one, on a ridge line, at the bottom of a ridge. Often these things are found at the bottom of ridges, where the sand is eroded away. And what we've got, let's get a bit closer, is what looks like breathing gear. Technical breathing gear. Now this is all pitted and eroded. It's attached to this nose area where we have nostrils here. And it kind of looks like it kind of clips onto it like that. And then we have the eyes here. Just about make them out. Mummified. So this is desiccated and mummified in the extremely dry, cold conditions on the surface. Right? Very interesting. But look at the pitting in this. This is probably some sort of alloy, I would imagine, this helmet. It's incredibly pitted and has all these nodules on it. It's almost as if it was ended up underwater, and that things may have been growing off it, like little barnacles. These could be little barnacles on here. Okay, these nodules and lumps. It's concretion by the looks of it, which is kind of what you get underwater. So is it possible that this was actually a diver and didn't need this to breathe on the surface, but to breathe underwater? This is a lake bed, so it may well be. It may well be an actual diver that was diving in the lake and for some reason ended up mummified like this for maybe 1 million years, and then the sand's kind of eroded away, revealing the details. Who knows? But tantalising evidence nonetheless, either way. Very interesting. We've also got this thing here. Now, this is something I published on my spare channel, Space Detective 1, just a week or two ago. And this is, I keep coming back to this because this is really odd. Not only does it look like Quetzalcoatl, the flying serpent from Mesoamerican or Central American mythology, like we have here, but it also has some complex things sticking out of the nose area here. There's the nose, There's an eye. There's the other eyebrow there, there's an eye. You've got teeth here. And the mouth obviously coming round. But you've got what looks like complicated equipment sticking out of it. Now, why would that be? Now, why would a reptoid or reptilian looking creature need such breathing gear? What does this represent? Could it also have been underwater or representing something that swam underwater as well? Or is it some kind of damage to the thing that makes it look like it's breathing gear? Maybe there were tusks or bigger teeth sticking out and they're all kind of smashed in or something. Hard to say, but it doesn't make a lot of visual sense. And the only way I can really get my head around this is to say maybe this is also some kind of breathing apparatus sticking out of its face, attached to the nose here. Who's to say? But what we have are multiple examples of heads with breathing gear or possible breathing gear, and this one in particular I thought was pretty cool. You've got these pipes coming out. So why would they need breathing gear if it's their own planet? Were they pilots who were wearing helmets, Stone Temple pilots like it says in that on that image? Or were they alive after the actual climate changed on Mars and the atmosphere was destroyed? Were they on the surface after it was no longer breathable? In other words, after the cataclysm. Now, what this may prove is that there were people on the surface walking around or doing stuff after the cataclysm that largely destroyed the atmosphere. In other words, stripped it of oxygen or breathable air. Is that possible? I think it is. And we even have things like this. Now, hang on, that's not it. We've got some other things here, hang on. Let me show you this while I'm here. There's even this creature here. Now, I don't know what sort of creature this represents, but we have a creature here with a head and an arm, comes around like that, and even a hand, right, with fingers. Very vague details there. The arm comes up like this, shoulder, you can even see the joint there. But there seems to be something technical on the back of this thing, here. Like a backpack. And you've got the eyes here. We even seem to have some breathing gear here. Now, this reminded me of the dog of war video I did recently, a couple of weeks ago, where I showed some dogs wearing gas masks. Now, that's what this looks like. This looks like some kind of animal or creature wearing some breathing gear here, because you can actually see the face detail coming in here, and then this looks joined rather than part of it, like a separate thing. And this kind of comes around like that. We've got details here, technical details, and then it seems to be joined to this thing here. Now, this may actually be a separate thing altogether, this whole thing, I don't know. Because you've got the arm coming round like that, top of the head, back of the neck, and this weird kind of contraption, which seems to kind of join to this, with some technical detail in there. So this to me looks like it's wearing some kind of suit, and there seems to be a belt that comes around the front there. Don't know if you can see that. Very odd indeed, very, very strange. But there's something going on here, and we're not seeing all the detail because it's a bit vague and the photos aren't great. But this is tantalising evidence of some kind of apparatus, either diving apparatus or breathing apparatus for just surviving in the atmosphere, that was probably destroyed before these people or creatures were walking around on the surface. So does this prove that Martians actually survived the cataclysm and they weren't all wiped out, as we have been sort of led to believe? Is that possible? Is it possible that a lot of them survived underground and occasionally came up to the surface to do various things, who knows what, and had to wear breathing special suits or helmets so they could breathe? I think that is a possibility. And this may be evidence of it. This may actually be good evidence that there was survivors on Mars and that they went up onto the ground or down into the crater. They either flew there or came up from under the ground and survived the cataclysm. And the reason they have this breathing gear on their helmets or coming out of their nose or mouth is that they needed something to help them survive the atmosphere after the atmosphere was largely destroyed. So as usual, links will be below to all these things. There will be a link to this new playlist I've done, which is called Mars Cyborgs, which has got these videos in. We have this video here, Mars astronaut found. We have this one, more ancient helmets on Mars. Now, I've been rethinking some of these things. This looks a bit like an ancient helmet, but I wonder whether this is actually a modern helmet here, not some ancient thing that goes back millions of years, like some ancient Greek helmet or something. Like we get on Earth, this looks like it might be more technical than that. This might be an actual modern helmet with breathing apparatus inside it. We've even got this weird pipe thing sticking out the back here. So that was interesting. There's also this thing now. I've been for a long time trying to figure out what this is. This weird box, because it's got pipes coming out of it. Now this was something I found back in 2018 also, a couple of years back, and this is called mystery boxes found on Mars, strange structures. Why would a box have pipes coming out of it unless it was perhaps some kind of breathing apparatus or backpack? This may actually be a backpack here. I try and ignore this other thing next to it because that's confusing the shape of it. Just concentrate on this thing in the front here. We've got this opening, which almost looks like a letterbox kind of shaped opening, and we've got these two pipes coming up to here. Now, is it possible that this was worn on somebody's back as breathing apparatus? I don't know. That's a possible explanation for it, but we will probably never know with this thing. Let's go center screen with that so we can see these things a bit better. And some of these things are way too technical for them to be random. And when you have multiple examples of the same sort of technology or things on the surface, then they cannot just be dismissed away as coincidence. There are far too many of these things, and they seem to match up pretty well, a lot of them. And that says to me that what we're looking at are factual things that match, which, when you have multiples of the same thing on the surface, prove that they are not randomly shaped, wind-carved rocks, okay? So, to all the skeptics out there, you should really go back to bed and try and recontemplate your existence, because what we have here is very good evidence that there was life on Mars. And this is a GIGAPAN here. If you want to check out today's find, you want to look to the far right over here. This is a nice GIGAPAN by Neal, Spence, a friend of mine. Does lovely GIGAPANs. This is a good example. Zoom into this part here, and you can see that head with the exterior jewel parts here. It's a bit dark, but you can see it. You've got that square eye. You've got another bit of an eye there, which is just sort of the edge of the eye. Got the nose. You can see the teeth there. 1, 2, 3, 4, and you can see those jewel parts coming down. But it's a bit dark, so you may need to brighten that a bit. Basically, what we have evidence for on Mars is some kind of cyborg technology, breathing apparatus like we have on this one, with pipes coming out. helmets with pipes and breathing gear. Were they breathing oxygen or some other air mixture? We'll probably never know. But there used to be an oxygen atmosphere on Mars, and I would imagine that the humans on Mars, like this guy, were breathing oxygen. And when the atmosphere was destroyed, they had to wear helmets and breathing gear like we do when we go to other planets or places like this. This could prove that not only did they survive the cataclysm that largely destroyed the atmosphere on Mars, but they were doing things on the surface for a long time afterwards, perhaps, performing whatever duties those were on the surface, walking around doing stuff on the ground. And some of these may have been pilots. There do seem to be pieces of wreckage all over the place that look like crashed aircraft and missiles and all sorts of debris lying around. And these were possibly some of the pilots of those. We got this interesting gear sticking out of the nose here. Very interesting. Another complex one here, and incidentally there are some others that I've spotted that look like they're wearing goggles to protect the eyes. Now if the air pressure is low on Mars, that would make sense, because otherwise the water in your eyes would boil up and your eyeballs would probably explode or pop out. So you'd have to wear pretty tight goggles on the surface to protect them. There's another one here with goggles. Here, see that? Got a square-ish part, rectangular part coming around here. Not very detailed, but that's what it is. It's almost like a set of goggles or kind of a face mask of some sort coming round here. Very interesting. And there's that other one that I briefly showed you. This isn't very clear. This is quite large. This is over 1 foot tall, maybe 1.5 feet. So this is like a big helmet, and we've got some kind of pipe sticking out the back here. And the sort of armoured parts, the front, the mouth part here. Very interesting. So some of these things may not be ancient war helmets like I've suggested, although there are those on Mars. A lot of them may be quite modern and survivors of the cataclysm. Now this may be an example of an ancient helmet, like I originally suggested years ago when I found it. But these look modern, with breathing gear, with pipes coming out of the nose, and other what look like technical details, like we have here. Okay? Very similar. So if I find any more of these, I'll put them in at the end as well, coming up in a few seconds. So there we have it. Cyborgs on Mars, or humanoids or Martians wearing breathing apparatus to survive the harsh conditions. And even a small creature here with what looks like some kind of breathing apparatus or gas mask, face mask. Very appropriate. So there we are. Thanks for watching, everybody. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you soon. Stay safe, take care. Thanks for watching. See you soon.